The security cameras at Elite University captured the moment that would later go viral. A young woman in a cleanly pressed uniform walking through the grand entrance, her curly hair catching the morning light. None of the students rushing past noticed that she didn't belong there. Not yet. That was the thing about revolution in 2024. It didn't wear a mask. Sometimes it wore a doorman's daughter's smile. Helena Santos had spent 18 years watching her father guard the gates of luxury buildings, learning that every system had its gaps. Now, at 22, she was about to exploit the biggest gap of all, the prestigious university's own admissions algorithm. "Your breakfast, Miss Chen," Helena said, placing a tray beside the building's newest resident, a tech executive who always worked in the common area. Thomas Chen barely looked up from his laptop, but Helena had already seen what she needed, his access code to the building's main server. 4 years of failed university applications had taught Helena more than any classroom could. Each rejection letter came with the same polite explanation: extremely competitive admission cycle. But the truth lived in the numbers. Despite ranking in the top 1% of public school students, she'd watched children from private schools with half her scores walk through those university gates. The revolution began 3 months ago when Helena discovered the hidden algorithm. Elite University didn't just favor wealth, they'd encoded it into their admission software. Every application went through digital filters designed to maintain what they called demographic balance. Helena had found this out the way she learned everything, by watching, listening, and teaching herself to code during her father's night shifts. "You're unusually quiet today," her father Pedro said during their shift change. His uniform was identical to hers, pressed with the same care, worn with the same dignity, but Helena's fingers still burned from typing code all night, building her digital skeleton key. "Just tired," she replied, knowing he'd worry if she told him the truth. That by tomorrow morning, she would either be exposed as a fraud or accepted into the university's most elite program. That she'd created an algorithm to infiltrate their system, planting her application among the children of Brazil's wealthiest families. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. She'd discovered that the university's software automatically flagged applications with certain markers: private schools, family connections, specific postal codes. Helena had spent months building a digital ghost, a perfect applicant with all the right credentials. Then she'd woven her real application into its shadow. When the acceptance letters went out tomorrow, both would be approved. But Helena had added something extra, a delayed program that would activate after her acceptance was secure. It would expose the entire rigged system to the world. "Your morning coffee, Mrs. Anderson," Helena said, serving another resident. The woman nodded without looking up from her phone, never noticing how Helena's uniform concealed a mind that had taught itself 3 programming languages. The building's security desk had been Helena's classroom. During quiet hours, she'd watched free coding tutorials on YouTube, practiced on a second-hand laptop, and gradually pieced together how digital systems worked. The privilege around her became her textbook. She studied how it moved, how it talked, how it protected itself. Her friend Marcus, a delivery driver who dreamed of being a journalist, was the only one who knew her plan. "They'll never see it coming," he'd said. "They don't think we can understand their technology." That was their mistake. They thought technology belonged to them, like the building's golden gates and marble floors. They forgot that revolution often came from below. Helena's program was already running, threading itself through the university's digital architecture like roots through concrete. By morning, it would bloom into something unstoppable. "I'm heading out," Thomas Chen announced, gathering his things. He paused at Helena's desk. "You know, I've noticed you're always working on that laptop. If you're interested in tech, my company offers coding workshops." Helena thanked him politely, suppressing a smile. His company's security system had been the first one she'd learned to crack, practicing late at night while the building slept. The day passed in a blur of greetings and security checks. Helena maintained her invisible role, the quiet professional who kept their world running smoothly. No one noticed how her fingers tapped against her leg in binary rhythms, or how her eyes tracked the security camera's blind spots. Evening brought a new shift of residents returning from work. Helena watched them pass. Lawyers, executives, doctors, all people who assumed their children's futures were secure. They didn't know that tomorrow's acceptance letters would carry a virus of truth. "Everything all right?" her father asked during their final shift change. "You seem different lately." Helena looked at him, really looked at him. 15 years of opening doors for others had left lines around his eyes but hadn't dimmed their kindness. He'd raised her alone after her mother died, working double shifts to keep her in school. Everything she was about to do was for him too. "I'm fine," she said, "just thinking about the future." That night, in their small apartment above the city's endless lights, Helena made final adjustments to her code. The program was beautiful in its complexity, a digital key that would unlock doors kept closed for generations. Her laptop screen reflected the contrast of her world, lines of elegant code written from a desk made of salvaged wood, breakthrough algorithms created in a room where the ceiling leaked when it rained. Tomorrow, these lines of code would bridge those worlds. The news would call it a hack later, but that wasn't quite right. Helena hadn't broken their system. She'd simply shown it what it wanted to see. Like her uniform, like her careful smile, like the way she'd learned to move through their world without disturbing its surface. She thought about the other students like her, the cleaning lady's sons who solved complex equations between shifts, the bus drivers' daughters who read physics textbooks during their commutes. After tomorrow, they would know it was possible. The gates could be opened. Helena's fingers moved across the keyboard one last time, checking each line of code. The program was perfect. She'd made sure of that. It had to be, because tomorrow wasn't just about getting in. It was about proving that minds like hers had always belonged there. The city lights flickered outside her window as she finally closed her laptop. In 12 hours, acceptance letters would go out, her digital ghost would secure her place, and then, one by one, the carefully maintained walls between Brazil's social classes would begin to crack. Revolution in 2024 didn't need guns or guards. Sometimes it just needed the right algorithm and the courage to press enter. Morning came with the sound of traffic and her father preparing for his shift. Helena dressed carefully in her uniform, checking that every button was perfectly aligned. Today, of all days, she needed to be invisible. "You look nice," her father said, touching her shoulder. "Your mother would be proud." Helena swallowed hard. Would her mother understand what she was about to do? Would she approve of using their own system against them? But then she remembered her mother's last words, whispered in a public hospital where they'd waited too long for treatment they couldn't afford. "Don't let them tell you where you belong." The morning sun was just touching the tops of the city's tallest buildings when Helena took her place behind the security desk. Her laptop hummed quietly beside her, running the program that would change everything. A message flashed on her screen. "System infiltration complete. Acceptance letters processing." Helena smiled at the next resident who passed, maintaining her role in their world for a few hours more. They had built walls of wealth and privilege, protected them with gates and guards and algorithms. But they had forgotten one thing. Sometimes the revolution wears a uniform. The acceptance letter arrived at 9:47 a.m., while Helena was checking IDs at the security desk. Her phone buzzed twice, once for the official email, once for Marcus's message. It worked. She maintained her professional smile as Thomas Chen passed through the lobby, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her laptop. The university's logo gleamed at the top of the email. "Congratulations on your acceptance to Elite University's computer science program." Her digital ghost had worked perfectly. Too perfectly. "Miss Santos?" Thomas Chen had stopped, turning back. "Are you all right? You look pale." Helena quickly minimized her email. "I'm fine, sir, just a minor headache." He lingered at her desk, studying her with newfound interest. "You know, I've been meaning to ask. I couldn't help but notice the coding work you do during quiet hours. It's quite sophisticated." A chill ran down Helena's spine. Had he seen something? But Thomas just smiled, sliding his business card across her desk. "My company's always looking for raw talent. Traditional credentials aren't everything." If he only knew. The morning brought a steady stream of reactions to the acceptance letters. Laura Anderson swept through the lobby in tears of joy, her mother already on the phone announcing the news. Helena watched them celebrate, knowing her own letter carried the same congratulatory words. But acceptance was only phase one. Her program had done more than just infiltrate the system. It had documented everything. The hidden algorithms that filtered applications by postal code, the digital tags that marked legacy candidates, the automated systems designed to maintain what they called demographic balance. All that evidence was now waiting like a digital time bomb, set to explode across social media the moment Helena physically stepped into her first class. "Did you see the news?" Marcus texted. "They're calling it the most competitive year ever, only 3% acceptance rate." Helena knew the real numbers. Her program had found them buried in the university's servers. 40% of spots reserved for legacy admissions, another 35% for private school applicants. Merit was a distant consideration. The afternoon brought an unexpected complication. Thomas Chen was back, this time with a colleague. They sat in the lobby, laptops open, discussing system security. "The firewall detected some unusual activity last night," his colleague said. "Probably nothing, but with the admissions just released." Helena kept her eyes on her security monitors, heart racing. She'd been careful, routing her program through multiple proxy servers, masking its signature. But Thomas Chen hadn't built his tech empire by being careless. "Helena!" Her father's voice made her jump. "Early shift change today, remember?" She'd forgotten about the building's maintenance inspection. As she gathered her things, Thomas Chen called out, "Think about that internship offer, Miss Santos. Your talent shouldn't go to waste." If he only knew what that talent had already accomplished. At home, Helena finally let herself celebrate, but quietly. Her father was working a double shift. She'd made sure of that, needing privacy for what came next. The second phase of her plan was riskier. The acceptance letter had proven her program worked, but now came the harder part, documenting everything without getting caught. Her laptop connected to Elite University's servers one last time, gathering evidence of their rigged admissions system. Every line of discriminatory code, every hidden filter, every digital wall they'd built to keep people like her out, all of it would be exposed. But as she worked, a notification popped up. "Unusual access detected. Security protocols initiated." Helena's fingers flew across the keyboard, trying to protect her program. She'd planned for this, built in fail-safes, but someone was actively tracing her connection. Someone good. A new message appeared. "Interesting approach. Let's talk. T. Thomas Chen." Helena stared at the screen, mind racing. She could abort the program now, destroy the evidence. She could walk away with just her acceptance, already more than she'd dreamed possible. But this had never been just about her. She thought of her father, still opening doors for others after 20 years. She thought of Marcus, delivering packages to tech companies he could never work for. She thought of all the brilliant minds trapped behind society's digital walls. Her fingers returned to the keyboard. If Thomas Chen wanted to talk, they would talk. But first, she had to make sure the truth couldn't be buried again. A new program began uploading to multiple secure servers. Even if they caught her now, the evidence would still emerge. The revolution she'd coded couldn't be stopped with a single keystroke. Her phone buzzed. Marcus again. Emergency meeting called at the university board. Something about system irregularities. They were moving faster than she'd anticipated. Helena had planned to wait until classes started, but now... Another message flashed on her screen. My office, tomorrow, 8 a.m. Bring your code. T. Helena leaned back, mind churning through possibilities. Thomas Chen could expose her, destroy her chances, or... She opened a new terminal window and began typing. If she was going to meet the tech mogul tomorrow, she needed him to see the full picture. Not just the hack, but the reason behind it. Lines of code filled her screen as she worked through the night. But this time, she wasn't hiding her tracks. This time, she was laying them bare for all to see. Morning found her in the lobby of Chen Technologies, laptop under her arm. The revolution was about to evolve. The receptionist looked up, puzzled by her uniform. Miss Santos, Mr. Chen is expecting you. The elevator ride to the top floor gave Helena time to think. Everything she'd done, the infiltration, the evidence gathering, the planned exposure, had been leading to this moment. Thomas Chen's office overlooked the city, glass walls offering a view of both the gleaming financial district and the distant favelas. He stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back. You know, he said without turning, when I first noticed your coding style, I thought you might be one of those prodigies the big tech companies miss. But this, he gestured to a screen showing her program's architecture. This is something else entirely. Helena set her laptop on his desk, chin held high. Are you going to report me? He finally turned, and to her surprise, he was smiling. That depends. Are you going to tell me why you didn't just apply to work here directly, with skills like yours? Because this isn't about getting a job, Helena interrupted. This is about a system that needs to change. She opened her laptop, showing him not just the infiltration program, but everything else. The documented discrimination, the hidden filters, the digital walls built to maintain inequality. They coded their prejudice into algorithms and called it merit, she said. I just proved how arbitrary their barriers are. Thomas studied the screen, expression unreadable. You realize this could destroy people's trust in the entire educational system. Maybe it should be destroyed, Helena replied, so we can build something better. He was quiet for a long moment, looking back at the city view. My grandfather was a janitor, he finally said. In Taiwan, he used to tell me that revolution doesn't always need violence. Sometimes it just needs the right person to open the right door. Helena held her breath. I have a counter-proposal, Thomas continued. Instead of exposing the system, help me change it, legally, from the inside. He outlined his idea, a new educational initiative, funded by his company, designed to identify and support talented students from underprivileged backgrounds. Not charity, real investment in untapped potential. Your acceptance to elite university still stands, he said. You earned that, even if your methods were unorthodox. But work with me, and we can open the door for others without having to break it down. Helena looked at her laptop, at the program she'd created to force change. Then she looked at the city below, at all the invisible barriers dividing it. I have conditions, she said. Thomas Chen smiled. I expected nothing less. Part 3. System Crash. The media storm hit 3 weeks into Helena's first semester at elite university. Not because of her code, but because of Laura Anderson's viral post. My doorman's daughter is in my comp sci class. She scored higher than me on the entrance exam. How is this possible? Elite University Scandal. Helena sat in Thomas Chen's office watching the hashtag trend. Her carefully planned exposure had been derailed by a single tweet from a girl who'd never looked her in the eye during 4 years of elevator rides. Well, Thomas said, this wasn't part of our agreement. I didn't leak anything. Helena pulled up her program logs, showing him the dormant code. This is something else. The university's response came swiftly, a press release defending their merit-based admissions process. But Laura's post had sparked something. Other students began sharing stories of questionable acceptances, hidden preferences, legacy admissions. The system was unraveling on its own. Helena's phone buzzed constantly with messages from Marcus. Reporters wanting interviews, students sharing similar stories, social media exploding with debates about educational inequality. Then came the second bombshell. An anonymous source leaked internal documents showing elite universities' true acceptance rates by postal code. Helena's program hadn't just infiltrated their system, it had inspired others to speak out. The revolution she'd coded was happening anyway, just not on her terms. Thomas Chen watched the chaos unfold on multiple screens. Your father called? He's worried. Helena's heart stopped. What did you tell him? Nothing. But Helena, you need to decide what you're going to do. The spotlight's coming, whether you want it or not. She thought of her original plan, a controlled exposure, evidence released strategically. Now everything was accelerating, spinning beyond her control. Her phone lit up with a new message from Laura Anderson herself. I know what you did. Let's talk. The meeting was set for the university library. Laura arrived with 2 other students and a laptop full of questions. Show us how you did it, she demanded. We know you hacked the system. Helena studied the girl she'd watched grow up through a security desk window. Why do you care? You got in anyway. Because it's not fair, Laura's voice cracked. Not the way you think. My mother's on the board, but I had to maintain perfect grades. You just walked in. Perfect grades at a private school, Helena countered. Try maintaining any grades while working night shifts. The tension crackled between them, 2 worlds colliding in a library built by donations from families like Laura's. I could expose you, Laura threatened. You could, Helena agreed. But then you'd have to explain how you figured it out. How much time you spent monitoring my movements, checking my background, the same way I studied your world through a security desk. Laura's face flushed. The other students shifted uncomfortably. Or, Helena continued, you could help me change things. For real this time. She opened her laptop, showing them not her infiltration program, but the initiative she'd been developing with Thomas Chen, a transparent admission system blind to postal codes and family names. You have the influence I don't, Helena said. Make it viral, not as a scandal, but as a solution. The library grew quiet as Laura read through the proposal. Finally, she looked up. Why should I help you? Because you know the system is broken, even for people like you. The next 48 hours transformed everything. Laura's new post went viral, a detailed thread about educational inequality featuring the Chen Initiative. Helena's story emerged not as a scandal, but as a symbol. News channels descended on elite university. Helena's father watched in shock as his daughter appeared on national television, explaining how she'd taught herself coding during his night shifts. Thomas Chen's company announced a major investment in educational reform. Other tech leaders followed suit. The hashtag evolved from elite university scandal to open the gates. But real change came in smaller moments, like when Helena returned to her father's building and found young residents asking her for coding tips. Or when Laura Anderson started a student group advocating for admissions reform. The revolution hadn't come through hidden code or viral exposure. It came through an unlikely alliance between a doorman's daughter and the children of privilege who finally saw the walls their parents had built. 1 year after Helena's code shook Elite University, the acceptance letters went out again. This time, they came with a difference. The new admissions algorithm, designed by Helena and funded by Thomas Chen's company, stripped applications of names, addresses, and school information. Merit finally meant something real. Helena watched the results from her new office at Chen Technologies, where she led the Educational Reform Division while finishing her degree. The numbers told their own story. A 200% increase in acceptances from public schools, without any decrease in academic performance. Laura Anderson sat across from her, reviewing the data. Their unlikely partnership had become the face of educational reform, featured in tech magazines and social media campaigns. "My mother finally admitted you were right," Laura said, scrolling through the acceptance statistics. "She's stepping down from the board next month. Says it's time for new perspectives." The revolution hadn't just changed the system, it had changed the people within it. Helena's father still worked as a doorman, but now he ran a coding club in the building's community room. Every evening, children from both sides of the gates gathered to learn. The security desk where Helena had written her first lines of code became a symbol. Other companies followed Chen Technologies' lead, creating programs to identify talent in unexpected places. But the real victory came in smaller moments, like when Helena visited her old neighborhood and found teenagers trading programming tips instead of just dreams, or when Elite University's dean invited her to speak at graduation, not about her hack, but about her vision for the future. The story went viral not because of scandal, but because it offered hope. In a world of digital divides, sometimes the most revolutionary act was simply opening a door and holding it open for others. Helena's code had done more than expose a broken system. It had shown that talent didn't care about postal codes or family names. It just needed a chance to prove itself.